Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole, dropping truth bombs in the battle of the mind. I'm your host, Hands and Feet. But Michael's my real name. Anyways, so we've been going through this series to help people understand the truth of what's going on around us in the world. And for a lot of people, if this is your first time tuning in, it might be hard to believe that all this is true. And if you've tuned in before but ran away because you didn't like what you were hearing, you've got to really assess this information. You've got to investigate it for yourself. A lot of people, it seems, when they hear this stuff, they're either immediately going to dismiss it, or if they're going to check it out, they do a quick Google. Is this true? And immediately Google, brings up hits in their search, news articles, YouTube, whatever, they're going to say, no, that's of course not true. Oh yeah, Snopes, other fact checker sites. No, that's not true. And they go, oh, okay, good. Because I didn't want it to be true. And now I'm glad. I'm just going to go back to blissfully being ignorant to what's going on in the world. And they don't understand that the media, we've already shown this in part 8? No, part 7. The media is actually owned by the wealthiest, most powerful people in the world, who are the ones pushing this agenda. And Snopes, Fact Checker, Media Matters, all of this stuff is actually owned by people on that side, who are the puppets, what would you call them? The willfully, I don't know, the people that willfully go along with his agenda because they think that they're friends with said people and that they're going to prosper from this somehow. And it's awful. So tonight we're going to be looking at environmentalism. None of us desire for the world around us to be a dirty, disgusting cesspool that's killing us and that's just so contaminated we can't live. I think we can all agree on that. But the reality is what we're seeing in environmentalism, in the environmental movement, in the carbon tax, carbon credit systems that we're being told, we should participate in, are those things really for our good? Or is there something else going on? Long story short, yes. The goal of environmentalism, as it is pushed by powerful people, I'm not talking about your hippie friend, or your environmentally conscious friend who, tries to reuse absolutely everything. I'm talking about the powerful people behind these movements, funding them, pushing them. Those people actually want one world government, and they want to make a whole bunch of money off the carbon tax system. So we're going to look at a bunch of evidence tonight, friends. It's true. It's true. That's all I can say. So let's get into it. All right. First up, we've all heard that 97% of scientists agree, in this climate change. Well, let's just look at that. For some reason, we are so quick to bow down to scientific consensus. It's like they are our arbiters of truth. They know all that's going on. We can trust them. And frankly, we don't want to take any time out of our day from Netflix or going to the gym or traveling or planning our next vacation to actually look into this stuff ourselves. We just trust the scientists. The scientists have said it. Claims that 97, this is the Financial Post, by the way, definitely, not a media source that's trying to fight for, conservatism and fight against a globalist agenda or anything. Claims that 97% of scientists support climate alarm cannot be supported. In my column, I pointed out that people who invoke the 97% consensus often leave vague what is actually being agreed upon. And in this article, it talks about the reality that what they did was they sent out a survey to all these different scientists asking, what are your thoughts on climate change and everything? And most people didn't even respond. They didn't even give this stupid survey the time of day. But those that did, 97% of them said it was some sort of an issue. And, well, why do you think that is? Because of the people that were concerned about it, obviously the majority of them that are going to take time out of their busy research schedules are going to be people that think it's a real deal. And the number of people that actually responded was minimal. Here's a quick clip of this dude. This guy has been researching. He's actually a political scientist. And because the whole climate alarmism thing is actually political in agenda and in nature, this guy is the best person to be looking at it.
The question is, where did the 97% come from? Oh, well, it's on the NASA website. So the NASA webmaster put a reference to 97%. NASA never did a study on that. Where did it come from?
Can you explain the 97%?
Yes, 97% is where they say all scientists agree. It's a con that they do, so you don't have to be smart. You don't have to research it. You don't have to be informed. All you have to do is, it's like 4 out of 5 dentists recommend this toothpaste. Who are you going to be? You're going to be an anti-dentite, to use the Seinfeld phrase, anti-dentite, go against the dentist recommendation. You're going to go against all those scientists. What's your degree? And how can you don't even have a science degree. How can you dispute 97% of scientists? And now it's 99%, by the way. Al Gore just announced it's 99%. Turns out,
well, if Al Gore
that
said
was based first on a survey of 77 anonymous scientists. We don't know their names.
77?
We don't know their affiliation.
Holy smokes.
We don't know who they are. All we know is that it was 77 scientists. They whittled down from like over 10,000. And of those, allegedly 97% of the 77 scientists agree that global warming is real and man influences the climate. But the media turns that into global warming is real, we must act, it's dangerous, it's an emergency, we need the Green New Deal and the climate. Other studies have been equally absurd on this. They'll say 97% of scientists agree, and there's nothing of papers agree, and that we actually had an analysis of that. It's a fraction of 1% that they're claiming. They basically said they assumed any paper on climate science is accepted.
So, I mean, that's ridiculous. 77 scientists were surveyed on this, and 97% of those 77 said it was, a big deal. That means like maybe 1 or 2 were like, no, this is ridiculous. Like even when I was, it's been so long I've looked into this stuff. A lot of this is actually from research I was doing last year during the election, because that was one of the biggest topics in our federal election, carbon tax system. Liberal government said they're going to do it. Conservatives were going to do it. NDP were going to do it. Green Party, of course, was going to do it. Or they're going to do the heck out of it. Only one party, the People's Party of Canada, was saying, no, we're not going to have any part in that. And so I was like, well, what's going on? So I did all this research. I prepared something to put together. And so I had forgotten that it was only 77 scientists. That's ridiculous. Now, the carbon credit. This is what you really need to understand. They want to sell these carbon credits so that industry can purchase a credit and then have the right to put out carbon. Emission markets. Currently, there are 5 exchanges trading in carbon allowances. The European Climate Exchange, NASDAQ OMX Commodities Europe, PowerNext Commodity Exchange Bratislava, and the European Energy Exchange, NASDAQ OMX Commodities Europe, listed at contracted trade offsets. Okay. Generated by CDM carbon project called Certified Emission Reductions. Point being, friends, is you know how you can buy gold on the commodities market, you can buy oil on the commodities market, silver, grain, whatever. Maybe you played like, what was that old board game where it's like, it came out in like the 1930s or something, but you were trying to win and you had to buy commodities from like the banker or the stock market or whatever. Anyways, if the United Nations and the International Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, determines that in order for your industry to pump out carbon dioxide, or even just produce a little carbon dioxide as a byproduct of what you're doing, you have to purchase these credits for permission to do so. Who's printing these credits? like these certificates? Who's permitting this? Who's selling them, right? Someone is making a lot of money off of this. It's a bunch of baloney. They set this all up just to make money. Here's a guy that was running in the American elections in 2016, I think. He was running against Elizabeth Warren, if you've heard about her. She's the fake native lady of America. She claims she was the first native woman to ever become a professor at some university. Turned out she wasn't even native. She'd faked the whole thing. Anyways, listen to what he has to say. Donald Trump did the right thing in pulling out of the Paris Accords. Okay, Paris Climate Accords, that was the big thing.
Hello, this is Dr. Shiva, and I'm running for United States Senate against Elizabeth Warren in Massachusetts. I want to share with you, as I promised, why it was right for President Trump.
It's not allowed enough. Let me know, and I'll turn it up somehow.
The presentation I'm going to give you is a very objective one. We need to recognize that many people who are supporting the Paris Accords, if you ask them, why should we have been in this? Give me one benefit. No one can really give any benefit. In fact, I haven't had anyone rationally explain even one benefit. What I'm going to explain to you very quickly here, so everyone can understand in very simple ways, is why it was important that Donald Trump got out of this, why it was essentially going to support an international collusion to basically support the polluting of our environment, and more importantly, to basically tax all of us, businesses, small businesses, big businesses, primarily a lot of small businesses, and every consumer here with a carbon tax. And it's a very simple exposition of this, and I hope I make it clear to you. And obviously, if you have questions, we're periscoping, you're welcome to join us. First of all, let me explain something very basic here. So in this circle, let's consider the fact that we have a lot of businesses here. These are businesses throughout the world. And these businesses, are producing different things. And let's assume these are typically manufacturing businesses. They take resources, raw materials, they process stuff, and out comes products from these businesses, which typically go to the consumer. A lot of consumers here.
That's me and you.
You and me over here. And we buy these products and we pay this company some dollar amount. Now, many of these companies, because of the manufacturing process, do put out carbon and CO2 into the environment. Let's call that broadly, pollution, okay?
Yeah, carbon dioxide is so awful.
All right. So these
wouldn't want plants to breathe that.
They emit into the atmosphere. This is, let's call it before the Paris Accords. This is what's taking place. Again, businesses take resources, they create products, we buy them, and we pay some fee for them, and these businesses have been polluting.
What's up,
now,
infidel?
Has anything changed post the Paris Accords? And let's use the date 2030, as this is supposed to be an important date per the Paris Accords. So what happens here? Here again, I'm going to draw the same circle. We have the businesses, and let's put the year now 2030.
I don't get it.
In 2030, these businesses still
NBA
exist
LARPers
today.
are the worst.
Again, these are the businesses, and they are creating products, as I mentioned before, to us as consumers. Same situation. This is again you and me, and these.
If you think I'm on here pretending that I have like a master's in business arts, some sort of degree, and I'm trying to tell people how to make money, you should probably watch and close your mouth before you say anything, because you've totally missed the mark. Thank you.
Consumers pay some fee for these products, and guess what? They're still polluting. And I'll give you some numbers on this. In fact, they're polluting a lot more, as we'll see. But something very interesting happens. For the pollution they do, they have to now pay an organization, which I'm going to call, in double quotes, the IPCC. And this group is composed of people like Al Gore, people like the Bushes, many people from the commodities market, and
we just looked at this.
Global elite in here, quote unquote scientists. A dollar goes here, dollars go in, and these people deliver these.
You'd also have like people that own financial institutions for investing, they would be the ones that would be, I guess, probably purchasing the initial carbon credits and then selling them into the commodities market through those 5 different commodities markets or trading markets that we looked at. So they're the ones, I guess maybe they buy them from the IPCC at first for whatever initial rate is, and then they sell them. But as more and more people buy commodities or the demand goes up, the cost, the price on these certificates goes up. And these are pieces of digital paper, essentially. It's nothing. It's not like when you buy gold, you get a certificate that says you own this much gold and it's stored at some central place. And I don't think you could ever even get it. Like buying physical gold on a market nowadays, I think it's like really rare. And no one actually ships gold to you to store in your house. It's just not how it's done. But anyways, selling and buying carbon credits is like the most imaginary thing ever. And people like Al Gore in the bushes and wealthy people are the ones profiting off of this system.
These people something called carbon credits. And what this allows these companies to do now is
this guy is like, so again, dude, watch the video. Don't just be talking so that you can try and put funny stuff in the chat. This guy is not some guy telling you how to make money. He's unveiling why the Paris Accord and the carbon credit system and all is just a big money-making scam. He's actually a medical doctor, if I remember correctly, who ran for Senate against Elizabeth Warren.
Pollute, but in order to pollute, they have to pay this organization a fee, and this organization issues carbon credits. In fact, it gets even more interesting. These carbon credits, if you look at the commodities market, the global commodities market, these carbon credits are bought and sold here on this commodities market to people. And this generates the ability for this group to generate trillions, not billions, let me explain, trillions of dollars in new source of wealth. So
I just want to stop here. I just want to stop here and show you. UN official admits global warming agenda is really about destroying capitalism. This is Christiana Figueres at a conference in Brussels. One of her quotes here. This transformation is not about $10 billion. It's not about $100 billion. It's about trillions of dollars. Come back to that.
Created by this group as a vehicle to essentially charge polluter something, and this group has a potential to make trillions and trillions of dollars.
Disgusting.
So how did this all happen, and what was the Paris Accords? Well, the front end for this entire organization, by the way, Al Gore substantially at a certain point monopolized, had access.
Al Gore was puppeted by the people even more elite than he to be the mouthpiece to go around all over the world. You guys remember him pushing his hockey stick graph? Oh, we got to do something right away. Oh, he dedicated his life to that, knowing or believing one day it would pay off and he would be worth billions of dollars, because who knows why? I don't know. He wants to do things that he can do with billions of dollars. Probably pedophilia, from what we've been looking at.
Access to a large number of carbon credits, which he had accumulated, and his goal was to have a payday by forcing these businesses in the future, around post 2030, to buy these carbon credits. And if you actually look at this, the IPCC's PR, I call it their PR machine, was what we call the Paris Accords. The Paris Accords was really their PR engine to
Public
get
relations.
this out as though everyone needed to get on board. And what the U.S., if you look at the United States here, put the flag here, the U.S. Was being forced by the IPCC. By the way, this included establishment Democrats and establishment Republicans, who were essentially
naturally
telling the U.S. government that it needed to create what we call a green fund. And this green fund, and I'll explain what this was really about, the U.S. was going to have to put $100 billion into this green fund. And what was this 100 billion for? Well, remember, the countries who are polluting really didn't want to be part of this. They didn't really want to be part of the Paris Accords. Why? Because they have to pay fees to the IPCC. So how do you get them to be part of this? So if I...
One of those was Stephen Harper, who actually said no to the Kyoto Accord back in the day. Of course, we know now everything has changed. Not to say Stephen Harper is a saint by any means.
Do this over here, what I call the influencers of these countries. Influencers of countries. So for example, if you take India, China, and you go down the list of what they call about 190 plus countries, remember all these people have influencers, so-called advisors. This $100 billion number was going to be funneled through different NGOs to essentially pay off, and in fact, people had already gotten agreements that if they joined the Paris Accords, that they're going to get dollars funneled to them. This is why people were involved in this. In fact, some of the WikiLeaks stuff came out. Jairam Ramesh, one of the key advisors in India. Originally, if you go look at it, he said that the glaciers were not receding, and later on it was stated that the glaciers were receding. And in a recent email in WikiLeaks, he was actually thanking John Podesta for making all of this occur. So you have to really start thinking about what took place. But fundamentally,
there's WikiLeaks guys again, and John Podesta again. It's not just about... Well, did we talk about that? Well, it's not just about cheese pizza.
Trump wanted to exit this because I think Trump realized what was really going on. And what was really going on is this. The mafia of the IPCC was using the United States instrument, our Congress, our tax dollars, to funnel about 100 billion here. So we would pay off these people to join the Paris Accords. Now, let me just tell you, 100 billion is a relatively small amount because these guys were going to make trillions. So let me follow this through again so you get it. Businesses today are polluting. Just to give you an example, China today pollutes around 11 billion tons of carbon into the atmosphere. 11 billion tons of carbon. That's what they're doing today. By 2030, or between now and 2030, guess what? China's still allowed to pollute. In fact, China is allowed to go up to 22 billion tons, which means they're allowed to go 11 billion tons in carbon, which means they're going to pollute more. They're going to double their pollution during...
That's how they got China to go on board.
And that's how they got China to join.
Yeah, exactly.
After 2030, there's going to be a big payday for these guys because they're going to be able to sell China carbon credits. I hope everyone's following. The bottom line is, these set of...
The reason China agreed to this is because they know in 10 years... Well, this was made like back in 2017. They know that in 10 years, they're not going to do it. In fact, they probably think within 10 years they'll have taken over the world at the way they're operating.
90, in many ways, so-called influencers and advisors, many of them essentially are waiting for this $100 billion payday, supported the Paris Accords because they're going to be paid, and that's how they force their countries' prime ministers and people to say, yeah, we got to join this Paris Accords. The reality is when you step back and look at this diagram, who really profits is the who are going to make money on carbon credits as they fluctuate and rapidly grow in price post-2030. So a $100 billion payout to most of these corrupt officials, it's very well worth it for them because they're going to have a 1,000%, 100 to 1,000% increase in profits. So fundamentally, what Donald Trump did was he saw the scam, which is what it is. And fundamentally what this does is makes liberal bourgeois feel good that they're part of the Paris Accords. In fact, the MIT president has said, we have conclusive evidence that temperature has gone up. Let me just make it very clear that Hansen, the guy who came up with this temperature rating at NASA, during the 1950s to 1990, they used what they said was the average temperature, 1998. During that period, that's how they measured the average temperature. And they said the average temperature was 15 degrees Celsius. And they predicted in around 1988, that temperature was going to go up. So again, in 1988, papers are starting to come out saying the average temperature measured between 1950 to 1980 is 15 degrees. And they're saying, temperature is going to rise on the planet Earth. Well, what happens by 1995? Before
that, if anyone was born before 2000, They were talking about global cooling, another ice age. Oh, and that was another thing that they were pumping fear. Like, everyone get on board. New ice age is coming. And then it was, okay, global warming, global warming. Now it's climate change, because climate change covers every base. If it's really cold for some reason in Florida, they go, see guys. And if it's really hot in Iceland, they go, see guys.
1996, they find
it's like a
that the
catch-all.
temperature actually, in fact, gone down a little bit. It was not going up. And somehow, mysteriously, around 2002, Hansen says, yes, the temperature has gone up. And how did he get it to go up? He got it to go up by saying that the average temperature is now 14 degrees. He actually changed the goalpost. Before it's 14, he said now it's 14, and he said we're measuring 14.64. So what they did was a complete lie, and in fact this changing of the goalpost was done in an email. All of this is written in a beautiful article by Arvind Kumar in American Thinker called 14 is the new 15, or 14 is the new 15, exactly. So you should go read it by Arvind Kumar in American Thinker. He lays it out very beautifully. But the bottom line is, there is no conclusive evidence that the temperature has gone up. If you look at the facts, this entire process really profits this group. The reality is China is going to continue to pollute 2x, 200% more. India also gets to pollute from 2 billion to 4 billion. In fact, we're going to drop our carbon emissions from 5 billion to 4 billion. So this entire process is...
So that's actually, friends, because there is an agenda to make to break the United States, and one of those ways is through financial economic warfare. If they're cutting themselves out at the knees, not being able to put out horrible carbon dioxide, and overcharging all of their industries, these carbon credits and whatever, and making all the industries suffer, they become less competitive against India and China, namely China. And so then they are weaker in the world. And the people on the left pushing this, the globalists, they want, as we can see right now today, they want the United States to be shattered so that it cannot withstand their globalist agenda. And it's about money and power, as we're seeing here.
Really a big racket. So all of us, when I go back to this, a consumer, guess what? In the future, we're actually going to pay more for products. Businesses are going to be charged more. So businesses are paying taxes. Each consumer's product is going to go up. These guys up here are the ones who are going to make money. So extremely good that Donald Trump pulled out of this. This was a patriotic thing to do. And we need to start really exposing the mainstream media and the elite academics who are all actually behind this. Thank you.
That's what I'm trying. And I don't understand, why did this guy lose against Elizabeth Warren? Because people don't know what's going on. They just think she's this wonderful person. They think this guy is who is this guy? Some nobody, MIT PhD. Not a dummy, guys. He probably deserved to have the Senate seat. So this is just an article here by this guy, Canuck Law. Anyways, he went and vetted that guy's information. I found that fascinating. And here is the article he was talking about. American thinker, Arvind Kumar, 14's the new 15. You guys, now that you've seen this, you can go back to it in the video of this if you want. And then you will be able to get the title for this if you want to read it yourself. But it's about money and control by the wealthy elite, and this lady, like, bureaucracy in many ways, advisors, political advisors, these people that just sit in offices and write political articles, whatever. So much of that is just made up fake jobs. They do absolutely nothing to contribute to the world around them. They're just mouthpieces paid by powerful people to just keep pushing, or resisting. Well, I guess it's important to have people resisting against this garbage, but yeah, it's crazy. I couldn't find the original article I'd seen before, which talked to, I don't think it was her, it was someone else. It was like right there. I'd found the article in the United Nations documents or something, where it talked about just, this is just a way to make a bunch of money. And of course they didn't use that language. And here is this article that talks more about what she was saying and how she said that. Yeah, right. The ironic thing is the bare minimum goal of the upcoming Paris talks is to set a ceiling on global warming of 2 degrees Celsius, when the UN's own climate changes reports don't justify such a goal. I smell carbon tax. Here's a little more from this guy. This is interesting.
I rely on myself. I actually have worked with teams of scientists. I authored a report of over 1,000 international scientists that have dissented from so-called man-made global warming
But this
fears.
is climate science, and I have
It's
to
that
also
report you're referencing had included Nature Conservancy and the Union of Concerned Scientists. It included environmental activists. It was written to cause a political agenda, and American people aren't that stupid.
Okay, you
can
keep
see
saying,
right
you
through
keep
it.
saying political agenda. I mean, take your organization, climatedepot.com.
Yes.
Who finances you?
We got over 80% is from individual donors. I wish there were big energy like you seem to think is fact. There is no big energy out there promoting it. In fact, one donation by the natural gas carbon-based energy to the Sierra Club of $26 million exceeded my budget by about 5 times.
All right.
So just pay attention to that. Natural gas company paying the Sierra Club. We'll hear about them later on.
One donation. So if you want to look at the big energy, look at environmental groups getting money.
Do you get any money from the oil companies?
We might get some, but I used to work for Senator Inhofe. How much money does big energy give? His answer was not enough. When you look at how well financed the other side is and how much they've given. I wish big energy were like you say, the Koch brothers, which many people say, oh, the evil Koch brothers, 59th giving in American politics. That's where they come in. You have the Democrats.
59th. Wow. Those guys have a lot more money than that. Real climate science. Okay, so there's this dude named Tony Heller who puts out YouTube videos and articles debunking all of this stuff. And I watched some video where someone was trying to debunk him and said, oh, he's just some idiot. Who is Tony Heller? Here's his credentials. The guy's brilliant. He's some brilliant computer science engineer. And he's done all of this amazing stuff. He's responsible for some of the first major processors or something. And yeah, he says he's a lifelong environmentalist, but he wants real environmental care, not this political garbage. But here's his YouTube channel, and here's just a little from him.
Are. This graph shows 3 different versions of the NASA GISS global land surface temperature anomaly. The blue line is the 2000 version, which showed about 0.5 C warming. The green line is the 2017 version, which showed about 1.5 C warming. And the red line is the just released 2019 version, which shows about 2 degrees Celsius warming.
How's that
Note
working?
that the past in each successive version got progressively cooler. The past in the 2017 version was cooler than the 2000 version, and the past in the 2019 version is even cooler.
Wasn't cool enough, wasn't hot enough.
At the same time, the present is getting much warmer. Note how they increased temperatures between the 2000 and the 2017 version, and once again between the 2017 and the 2019 versions. So they've quadrupled warming mainly by cooling past temperatures and warming present temperatures. Satellites show that since the year 2000, land temperatures have warmed about 0.2 degrees Celsius. But NASA has increased land warming since the year 2000 by about 1.5 degrees Celsius. So more than 80% of the change since the year 2000 is due to data tampering, and only a small percentage is due to actual warming. Now let's look at why this is being done.
Anyways, this is pretty interesting actually.
This was the global temperature graph from the 1990 IPCC report. It showed that temperatures were much warmer 800
So again, International Panel for Climate Change in 1990.
years ago when CO2 levels were very low. This was known as the medieval warm period, and it pretty much destroyed the theory of catastrophic global warming. Around the year 1995,
I'll leave that to you guys. Data tampering past the climate tipping point. It's just so. The United Nations is a huge. I mean, United Nations. Hello, does that not reek of one world government? That's what they want to be. And yeah, they're just doing whatever they can, more and more aggressively these days, to push this agenda. Oh, here's an interesting one. So this fellow has a doctorate in political science out of London, Ontario. Moved here from India, a Muslim, and he speaks out a lot about radical Islamification, which is where you have people that claim to be Muslims also calling for, violence or whatever in order to spread Islam. But he ran for the People's Party of Canada last year in the federal election, and here's just him briefly saying something about environmentalism.
George Bush swallowed it hard. Climate change came into being, and that becomes the instrument of a globalist agenda run through the United Nations, in which there's going to be a redistribution of wealth, redistribution of population, redistribution of migration effect. North-South will be equalized, and so on. Okay? Now that
I think that's enough of that. But, redistribution of population, one of the things the United Nations wants to push for is what are called climate refugees. Okay, so it's not enough that you're under threat of being bombed. That the threat of being blown up and killed en masse, a genocide, gosh, by all means, you should be able to flee where you live. And other nations should be good to accept you and put you in a place where temporarily you'll be safe and ideally also productive for that nation, so that you don't just become a leech burning through other people's tax dollars. And I'm not being cold by saying that. It's like if someone took me in for a couple of weeks because of, I don't know, flooding or a fire or something, I'd be grateful. But while there, I'd be like, hey, can I mow your lawn? Can I do dishes? Any way I can help you? Those are very small things, and I wouldn't expect anyone brought into our country as a refugee to, be making a whole bunch of money, but definitely don't be a horrible, negative financial impact on the people that have been good enough to take you in. And if I was going to be in a place for a year or two because of a fire, forcing me out of my home, guess what? I'd pay rent. I'd pay for food. I'd go find a job. I'd do anything in order to do something. So I really think our refugee system is completely messed up. But the United Nations doesn't. It wants it, and same with people like Justin Trudeau. They want desperately for our economy to just be sunk, so that we have no choice but to accept higher taxes and under the guise of taxing the rich, But so redistribution of wealth, redistribution of population, totally upending and destabilizing the Western free world. That is the goal with environmentalism. Climate change lies exposed, Jones and Company, June 18th, 2019.
Now, back live with Alan Jones.
Yes, well, Dr. Warner, Peter, he said, this is the most dangerous and frightening part of it, how such a lobbyist group, that's the IPCC, has been able to fool the whole world. And he said, these organised and deceitful forces are dangerous, and he expressed shock that the UN and governments would parade children around at UN climate summits.
So he is an expert involved in writing the first documents from which all of this began.
Correct.
And he has been basically put in a position where the lies are such that he has to come out there and say enough, enough. Now, I'm not a scientist, you're not a scientist, but we've had to deal with the entrails of it through government policy. This gives me heart, two things, that we're finally going to get people telling the truth about this. But
no one's going to listen.
Why the
I got 2 viewers
so
right now.
Why they are so desperate.
Nobody cares.
That this stuff is shut down.
Yes, and why, for example, on Q&A last night, they organised all the global warming apologists. And I understand that the managing director today has now admitted that the program was biased. Allegedly, and I'll demonstrate in a moment what I mean by allegedly, if you're talking about Q&A and reporting on Q&A, I got a quote-unquote roasting by News Limited. I thought, that's as it was reported at News Limited. I thought we worked for News Limited. Anyway, I'm referred to as a shock jock being, quote, slammed by a panel of science experts, all on the one side. They are experts according to their own evaluation of themselves. I was accused of downplaying the human impact on climate change. Of course, no attempt was made to contact me so that I could offer a defence. That's the ABC. But one of the guests was Professor David Caroli, referred to as an Australian atmospheric scientist based at the CSIRO. And a questioner asked Professor Caroli the following. I saw the radio commentator Alan Jones on TV recently, and he said that 0.04% of the world's atmosphere is CO2. The questioner went on, and 3% of that is created by human beings around the world, and of that, 1.3% is created by Australians. The questioner said, is that correct? And if so, is human activity really making a difference? A pretty good question. Professor Caroli replied, not everything Jones says is factually correct. No wonder he stumbled in seeking to repudiate me. He went on to say that while it is correct that 0.04% of the world's atmosphere is carbon dioxide, quote, Jones's statistics around humans, I think it means human beings, causing climate change and the role Australians specifically play is completely false. He said, I'm a climate scientist and Alan Jones is wrong. All his other numbers are wrong. Now remember, he said 0.04% of the world's carbon dioxide was correct. The other numbers that the question referred to were 3% of that is what human beings create around the world, and 1.3% of that 3% is created by Australians. Caroli said, though, all his other numbers, they must have been those last two numbers, are wrong. Well, on the 25th of May 2011, I interviewed Professor Caroli on radio. Let me just play you an extract, very brief, of that interview. It was very courteous and very friendly.
So back in time. Back in time.
Professor
Here we
Caroli,
go.
Good morning.
Good morning, Alan. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Can I just begin firstly with a little bit of maths so that we can agree on a couple of things? Would you say it's unarguable that the level of carbon dioxide in the air is less than 0.04%? And if I make that point, because nitrogen we know is about 78, oxygen about 21, and then there's argon and things like that. But CO2 in the air about 0.04%.
Yes.
Okay. Do you agree that
not a
the
lot, friends.
UN IPCC Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says that of the Earth's annual production of carbon dioxide, this 0.04% that's in the air, nature produces 97% and human beings 3%?
Of the annual fluxes that go in and the annual fluxes that come out, yes.
That's it. So I just want to get this clear on maths, because you're the scientist. I'm not. 0.04% of the air is carbon dioxide, and of that 0.04%, 97% is produced by nature and human beings 3%. Now, of that 3%, all Australian human activity, transport, industry, agriculture, mining, power generation, that stuff, we produce 1.3 to 1.5%.
Yeah, Alan, you're absolutely right.
Alan, you're absolutely right. That ends that. Let's just put that aside. I stand by what I've said for years. We are talking about a global warming hoax, demonising carbon dioxide, demonising coal-fired power, which has led us into this economic suicide mess. Business can't afford the energy bill. People at home can't afford the electricity bill. Why? Well, we export our coal so that others can have cheap electricity, but we're not prepared to use it. So
And let's just again remember, everyone, that you know, if you're, especially with what's going on with COVID and how they want to lock down economies, it's going to be the consumers that's going to feel the pinch, because infrastructure that's putting out the CO2s, buying the car, have been forced to spend money on carbon tax, carbon credits. they're not going to accept profit reductions. So what they'll do is just increase the price for the goods that they sell. And that means we'll be buying our gas for more money, or plastic materials, whatever, formed from petroleums. And at the same time, carbon taxation systems with governments, they open the door to cronyism like never before, because the government then goes to a huge corporation and says, "Hey, look, you've got to pay this much on carbon taxation." "Oh, we'd really rather not." "Oh, okay, well then we'll find a way that you don't have to, but in exchange you have to do this for us." "Okay, good, we'll do that." And it's a you scratch your back, my back, I'll scratch yours kind of crony system. It's disgusting.
That we can have cheap electricity because carbon dioxide is destroying the planet. That's what Caroli and the mob on Q&A would have you believe. Well, today on radio, now I don't ever do this, as you know, but bear with me. I spoke to Nils Axel Morner, Dr. Nils Axel Morner, the former head of paleogeophysics and the geodynamics department in Stockholm. He's a world authority on sea levels. He was on the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, chairman of a significant committee. He is saying that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is misleading humanity about climate change and sea levels, and that, in fact, a new solar-driven cooling period is not far off. He has said he tried to warn the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that it was publishing false information that would inevitably be discredited, and he said they ignored him. So he resigned in disgust and has decided to blow the whistle. I spoke to him this morning from Stockholm in Sweden. Now, it isn't possible to talk to him on television tonight, but Peter and I thought we should do this because it's immediate and urgent. In the light of the rubbish of the last 24 hours, it was important to hear what he had to say. So I just hope you'll bear with me. I know this is difficult. This is 11 minutes and 30 seconds of climate change dynamite. And I suppose he'll be vilified for his trouble, as we all are. This is how it began. Well, here in this country, in Australia, children are being taught at schools that Bondi Beach could finish up at Bathurst. You've been tracking sea levels at various parts of the globe, have you not, for 50 years? Are sea levels rising worldwide, which the climate change apologists keep telling us is happening?
No, certainly not. In the northern hemisphere, and especially in the European area, we can prove and test that absolute sea level is not rising more than about 1 millimeter per year. If we go to the equatorial region, and now we come closer to Australia, it's not even rising at all.
Amazing.
And it has been stable for the last 50 to 70 years.
There you are.
And that is a fact.
There you are. The UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says that changes in climate and sea levels are because of human emissions of carbon dioxide, CO2. You're saying it's solar activity which is the dominant factor and not carbon dioxide.
All right, we're going to pause that one there. You guys can check out the rest of that on your own. Climate Change Lies Exposed, Jones and Company, June 18, 2019. Like they said, Australia was responsible for like 1.3% of the human output of carbon dioxide, which is human output is 3%, I guess, of all the carbon dioxide being put into the atmosphere. 97% is just from creation or nature itself. So, like, what's going on with animals, volcanoes, springs, I don't know, but these things are putting off carbon dioxide way more than us. So us destroying ourselves, handicapping industry, making it so that people can't do anything. And that's going to be a big thing too. Huge crackdown on human transportation. Nope, sorry, you can't do anything because we're trying to save the world. We'll reduce, our output like 10%, maybe 40% even, but that's still a minute fraction of what's going on in the world. Like, what's 40% of 3%? You'd be left still with 1.6, 1.7% of the Earth's carbon dioxide output being by humans. Anyways, Canada puts out also an extremely low amount of carbon dioxide, and yet we're expected to pay so much. I can't believe some people. I was talking to a guy who worked in mining. That's where he wanted to get employed. He was actually with me in a training program to get the job, and he was advocating for like basically doing away with the job he was applying for. Like, hello. He said, I said it's unjust that we would be expected to pay so much when we actually, as a nation filled with trees and so few people per square kilometer, we have what's called a carbon dioxide deficit. So we actually produce more oxygen and eat up more carbon dioxide by all of our trees than we do put out carbon dioxide. And he said, yeah, but that doesn't matter because we have a low population density. So it's not fair to people in India where they have so many people. So we should have to pay more. And even though they put out way more than we do. And it was just like, man, you just can't win with some people. So here's a Climate Depot that one political scientist, what's his name? Moreno? Anyways, this, I guess, is his website. But it's got so much great information. Biden's green dreams are about controlling you, not the climate. His Green New Deal will not improve the environment. It will only decrease your standard of living. We've already talked about that now a couple times. Mark Morano, that's his name. But he has got so many good articles in here. Like, look at all, and this is, I guess, his sources or something. Anyways, just a trove, guys. So, like, there's no reason to believe the lie. There's no reason. And we can share this kind of stuff with our friends. Now I want to switch over a little bit. A while back, I talked about the reality that just because the Soviet Union is gone does not mean the globalist Marxists, Marxist being the communists behind the Soviet Union, have stopped. They have not just disappeared. They didn't just give up. The Soviet Union coming apart, I believe, was a ruse by the elite in charge over everything. And they said, look, let's dismantle this. We're going to shift gears, and people are going to, America for one, a lot of Western nations are going to drop their guard completely because they'll think the Cold War is over. This is Green Cross. Who started Green Cross? Green Cross was started by Mikhail Gorbachev right after the Soviet Union fell apart. Here it is. Mikhail Gorbachev. In 1993, Gorbachev launched Green Cross International, which, here, boop, there it is, just in case you want to see the logo we just looked at, which focused on encouraging sustainable futures. And then the World Political Forum. Is there anything else I have in here I want to look at? I think on a couple of these, I just highlighted a few little tidbits. Obviously, I mean, I'm just pointing people in the right direction. Wow, one viewer. It's just, people don't care. People don't care. They just can't wait to line up for the gulags, Oh, this will never happen. They don't understand that the same sorts of people that started the Soviet Union, that helped Mussolini, that, furthered the agenda of the Nazis, they have learned how to do this all so much more subtly, and we have to be alert. Anyways, so Mikhail Gorbachev starts Green Cross, and here's what Morano has to say about that.
This is what we're facing. This is, as Patrick Moore, the co-founder of Greenpeace, who turned against the organization, said.
Patrick Moore, Canadian. Hopefully you've heard of him by now.
The modern environmental movement is the most anti-human movement today on Earth. And I interviewed Václav Klaus, the former Czech president of Czech Republic, former Czechoslovakia. And he said, having grown up under communism, the greatest threat we face today is what he calls ambitious environmentalism. And he directly compares the whole quest, the whole way that, Lysenkoism, the whole way the Soviet system did it with all the science that had to support the policies, and you couldn't dissent, and you had to go along, and dissenters would be jailed. All that's happening today. We have a U.S. senator calling for RICO statutes against climate skeptics. We have Bill Nye, the science guy, supporting it, open to the idea of jailing skeptics for affecting his quality of life. This is what the state of where we are right now, and this is what college kids, this is what children are being taught, that there's no dissent, that we must do this, that the earth's in great peril, when the opposite is true. I mean, the earth...
Oh my gosh. How to Destroy the Climate Change Hoax. You can check that out. Mark Morano. But, I've tried to tell people a couple times now. He made a quick mention about, penalties for those who dissent. Well, in the Chinese communist China, under the Chinese Communist Party, you have a social credit system. So when people dissent, they dock you some of your merits, and that limits your ability to do things. And I've seen interviews where Chinese people are like, I'm not allowed to leave my home or my city. I'm not allowed to take the train to go visit anyone outside this area. Because of the things I've said on social media about our government. It's like, and people don't believe that's coming. Like, oh my gosh, we're so close to it. There's already so much pressure put on people. So here's the Earth Charter, tied to Gorbachev and Green Cross. But check this out: a common faith for an interdependent world. We know that there is coming a one world religious system, and environmentalism is being used as a tool to push us all towards a one world system, a one world government. But check this out, a reference to Stephen C. Rockefeller and his speech, A Common Faith for an Interdependent World. We've talked about him before. The Rothschilds, Soros, Gates, these people are up to no good. Who are the Rockefellers? Also not up to any good. Wealthy individuals from their original Rockefeller father, who was an oil tycoon. Stephen Clark Rockefeller, a fourth-generation member of the Rockefeller family. Don't be deceived just because he's got a smiling face here. This is the Ark of Hope. The Ark of Hope is a wooden chest created in 2001 by designer and painter Sally Linder to house the Earth Charter document. On its 5 panels are a series of paintings depicting artistic representations of air, water, fire, and spirit. Spirit and earth. Friends, if you don't know anything about the occult, these are the elements of magic. These are the elements of the occult. And so that's why spirit is there. This is not a science environmentalism movement. But yes, this is linked to our Earth Charter and Mikhail Gorbachev. Where did I have that? Oh, here it is. Well, let's just look at this. So here's the actual official Ark of Hope website. So you can go check this out. And what's so freaky about this, friends? Here's the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, here's ancient Israelites bowing before this Ark of the Covenant, which is said to have been the place where God rested. Here's what's called the mercy seat. These 2 cherubim or angels holding their wings together. It was said that God was present above this ark, and God told them to build this ark, and in it they put the 10 Commandments. They put Aaron's staff, which had budded. We believe the ark was lost. Some believe it's hidden somewhere, maybe even in Jerusalem, but we don't know. Anyways, so this is a major religious symbol. Even with it not existing, it pointed to Jesus Christ. But this is a huge deal for both Jews and Christians. Not in terms of physically, at least not for Christians, but it means something. So the fact that they've made this arc of hope for environmentalism, and I just showed you, the 5 elements. It's very spiritual what they're doing. Oh, shoot. All right, so here's just the different pictures from this artist. And this is where you would put the poles in, just like the Ark of the Covenant, to carry it. Here's the poles. Here's another side. I guess maybe this is fire. What's this one? Water, maybe? I don't know. Earth. We've got a tree, it goes into the ground, and you have its root system. This is very esoteric, friends. It's very spiritual. Air, symbolized by the feather. Does this blow up anymore? Nope. And on the top we have spirit. Yeah, here they bring it out. I don't know what these people are doing. Maybe they're laying gifts before it. Destination United Nations, Ark of Hope, Earth Charter. So the Earth Charter, let's just look at more of these, I guess. Like, this is a huge deal for the globalists. They got this thing being paraded around all over. And look, you've even got, like, looks to me like, I don't know, spiritual gurus or whatever checking this thing out. Oh, there you go. Earth Charter. The idea of the Earth Charter originated in 1987 by Marie Strong and Mikhail Gorbachev as members of the Club of Rome when the United Nations World Commission on Environment and Development called for a new charter to guide the transition to sustainable development. In 1992, the need for a charter was urged by then Secretary General Boutros Ghali at the Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit, but the time for such a declaration was not believed to be right. The Rio Declaration became the statement of the achievable consensus at that time. In 1994, Maurice Strong, chairman of the Earth Summit, and Mikhail Gorbachev, working through organizations they each founded, the Earth Council and Green Cross, that was Mikhail Gorbachev's respectively, restarted the Earth Charter as a civil society initiative with the help of the government of the Netherlands. Strong died, blah, 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 blah. Ark of the Hope was created for celebration of the Earth Charter held at Shelburne Farms, Vermont, on September 9, 2001. The charter has received opposition from several groups. For example, in the United States, members of religious groups such as the Religious Right have objected to the document on the grounds that it is secular. I was talking about the Earth Charter. It is secular, but it's also, well, it's not secular. It's definitely spiritual, but it's antichrist and espouses socialism. It certainly does. In addition, some conservative citation needed. Some conservatives cite an informal comment by Mikhail Gorbachev that the document is, quote, kind of 10 Commandments. And point to the fact that at the 2002 World Summit on Sustainable Development in Johannesburg, South Africa, a copy of the document, the Earth Charter, was placed symbolically in an Ark of Hope. So like we said, the 10 Commandments, you shall have no other gods before me, don't carve anything in order to worship me, give me the Sabbath day, don't steal, don't bear false witness, don't commit adultery, honor your parents, don't murder, and don't covet. Anyways, that was put in the Ark of the Covenant. So for these Earth Charters, respect Earth and life and all its diversity. All this stuff to be put in there, obviously is symbolic of anything. And so finally, guys, we're just going to look at Michael Moore's presentation of a documentary by a guy named Jeff Gibbs, who is a self-described environmentalist who has decided that the whole environmental movement is a giant scam, and it's called Planet of the Humans. I'm not going to watch it here tonight. I've already watched it. There's also a debunking video of this, and it was, I don't know. I don't do a lot of research into green tech because, frankly, I know it's there, but it's not as efficient as it needs to be. It's ridiculous to think people in northern Canada are going to just drive around in, Priuses when we can get like a foot of snow overnight. And it's ridiculous to think any of us are going to live only on electric cars or electric pickup trucks, even when the temperature can get as low as minus 60 degrees with the wind chill factor. And that would kill most batteries overnight unless you're plugged in, and not everyone can plug in every night. That's why diesel is a common fuel used for diesel engines, are a common engine type for vehicles up here, because they generally do pretty good in the cold. And I just know the whole thing is ridiculous. Like, we get snow, we get so much snow all over Canada that your solar panels, you'd have to be brushing them off every single day. And if there's cloud cover, you're not getting solar. There would be so many periods in the year where you would have to go back and power up the plants again. And the process of powering up a plant again can actually be quite dangerous and hazardous and trying on the equipment. And I know from someone who worked in mining, in the crude oil mining industry, that getting like the processing system up and running, they would tell us, like, look, it's dangerous. A lot of things can go wrong. Pressures are changing in the pipes and everything. And so the more times you're doing that, the more times you're rolling the dice from something cataclysmic happening. And we're a long way from being able to live off electricity without using fossil fuels, especially in places like Canada. So it's just a big giant pipe dream. Anyways, so I don't know a lot about the green tech, and so that debunking video was good because a lot of this stuff this guy says and talks about, they just tore it apart. And fine, that's good, great. Hopefully what they're saying is the truth, and it's not just that they're, such huge advocates of green tech that they're just completely biased against any dissenting opinions. But what is really important to see in this documentary is he uncovers that the environmental groups like the Sierra Club are getting paid loads and loads of money to prop up the different companies using non-renewable energy, who are doing some renewable energy projects and then paying the environmental groups to share propaganda that and give the okay, seal of approval to these companies, saying they're doing such a great job, and so that people will leave them alone, and it's just paid propaganda. And by the end, you realize, so like at this part, I haven't watched this for a while, so I had remembered it being all truncated or all kind of summarized or in a later portion. In fact, I remember it being a minute or 1 hour and like 59 minutes long. So I don't know if he edited it and uploaded it. Oh, here it is.
A long time coming.
It's running backwards from the way we originally intended.
So the debunker guys were upset about this because they said this was from the 90s. I'm not sure if it was really from the 90s. Maybe it's from like the early 2000s.
Intended to do it, but
that was disappointing.
But after all, it had been raining.
So what happened was their all their solar panels couldn't work because it had been raining. So they had to actually use backup generators burning fossil fuels.
Maybe next time things would go better. It was on the way.
It's been a long time coming, but tonight, change has come to America.
Yeah, and it ended up being horrible Marxist change.
Activists across the country cheered when newly elected President Barack Obama rolled out a $1 trillion stimulus package with nearly $100 billion for green energy. Green was finally ramping up, and everyone wanted to be part of it. President Obama brought in environmental activist Van Jones from the Apollo Alliance with shovel-ready projects.
They've got to put up tens of thousands of wind farms. They've got to put up millions of solar panels.
Former Vice President Al Gore, who had a few years earlier released an Oscar-winning film, shared his ideas with the president.
We
Oscar-winning,
have the opportunity
gross.
now to create jobs all across this country, in all 50 states, to repower America.
Al Gore had already encouraged billionaire airline owner Sir Richard Branson to invest big time in green energy.
Branson is pledging future profits from his airline to the tune of perhaps $3 billion. $3 billion, that's with a B, to fight global warming.
Is Al Gore a prophet? How'd you spell prophet?
That's so funny. Like this guy, he doesn't care about the environment. He wants money. So he's probably been promised, look, you invest $3 billion because this is going to look really good for this agenda. And somehow, some way, on the other side, you're going to make a bunch of money out of it.
Investors came forward.
Investor Vinod Khosla, known as the father of the clean tech revolution, has poured over $1 billion of his own money into some 50 energy startups.
Major banks were eager to get involved.
By 2020, we think that renewables will require $395 billion on an annual basis.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was both on the board of major environmental organizations and was leading a green energy investment group.
We build wind farms, we build solar farms. Once you build our plant, it's free energy forever.
Oh,
the
really?
Sierra Club received $50 million from billionaire and former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg. Their mission, fight coal and promote clean energy.
So with the mayor's gift, here's what will happen. We'll have a large and aggressive presence in 46 states.
It's time for America to find a new energy path, one that takes us beyond coal.
And then Bill McKibben, one of the nation's leading environmentalists and author of a breakthrough book called The End of Nature, formed an organization called 350.org with the mission of igniting a global climate movement.
Can I show off my necktie for a minute? Because they made it for me yesterday. It's got that 350 on it because it's the most important number in the world.
Things were looking up, and the green energy revolution was underway. Michigan had been hit hard by the Great Recession, and hundreds of millions of dollars in green stimulus money was arriving. Now, to do their part for the new green economy, General Motors introduced a new line of electric vehicles. When the Chevy Volt was ready for release, I attended their press conference.
So these electric with the
and we'll be able to take a look at it.
So this is just another huge gripe that the debunkers guys had about this film. They're like, Chevy Volt's like a super old car now. Like Teslas and everything are amazing. But she admits that like, well, we're actually charging this car off of the grid that's run on fossil fuels, and so that's another big thing that people don't understand. Unless all of your energy is coming from renewable sources already, cars that run or anything that runs off of electricity isn't helping because they're just producing the energy for that product somewhere else. And if it's through non-renewables, you're still producing carbon dioxide. And they got mad at this part too. They're like, oh, that's like those solar panels are so old and useless. The stuff they have now is so good. All right, fine. Like they were just showing how this giant space with these really inefficient panels can only like power 10 houses or something ridiculous. And the debunkers were like, yeah, but now with the tech we have, like you could put panels on the backside of your roof and they'd power, you know, most of your house or whatever. And well, if that's true, great. That'd be awesome. You got to wonder though, one of the big things is like, okay, what are the batteries made of? Okay. And how are you getting the if it's lithium, how are you getting that out of the ground? How much energy consumption goes into making that battery, right? And if everyone's has to have all these huge batteries in their homes, well, then that's more and more waste in the production. You know, are you driving around electric mining machines to get lithium out of the ground? Okay, well, what's powering that? Is it wind turbines like this? How much goes into producing that wind turbine? You know, and they were trying to debunk this too. Oh, these things last 25 years. Like it's crazy. This is a whole bunch of environmentalists. They're out here to see this area that was devastated in order to produce wind turbines. And the debunkers came out and said, yeah, but now like the trees have grown back and it's wonderful. Okay, fine. I've heard that even setting the concrete foundations for wind turbines, because there's some sort of, because of the chemical reaction in the concrete setting, it's gassing off all this stuff. And apparently it puts up a whole bunch of CO2. Whether or not that's true, I haven't investigated it because I know the whole thing's a bunch of crap anyways. But all these people are jaded environmentalists. It was quite funny and sad to watch. Hey, there's Syncrude. So here is crude oil.
I'm in a strange position. I'm against our addiction to fossil fuels and have long been a fan of green energy.
And it's so sad because like this looks so awful and devastating. But I'm not sure, like I don't recall him showing afterwards when they go back and they reclaim all this land and they plant a bunch of trees, and you can go look at it and it's pretty darn good, you know. It's definitely not this scar on Mother Earth like they like to portray it as. And these companies that do crude oil in Canada, they do it as clean and responsibly as possible. Like there's huge fines they have to, pay. Although again, we have the crony system. So whether or not they really pay those, who knows? But yeah, like they, you know, they're doing an incredible job. And a lot of the flack in the lobby groups against them are funded by people who are heavily invested themselves in oil companies around the world and in the United States, which is why they're trying to impinge upon what Canadian oil companies are doing, because they want them out of the market.
But everywhere I encountered green energy, it wasn't what it seemed.
Carbon material. So
I'm just skipping this stuff because when he talks about the technology, again, the debunkers said
ethanol plants also seem to have a secret ingredient.
This is the most productive farmland in the world, and we're not that far west of the biggest coal mines in the world as well. So bring the two together and get an ethanol plant.
Great. So ethanol was reliant on two things: a giant fossil fuel-based industrial agricultural system to produce corn, and even more fossil fuels in the form of coal. All of this in the attempt to replace fossil fuels? It was enough to make my head explode.
Can you imagine being an environmentalist and learning all this stuff?
The uneasy feeling that green energy was not going to save us. And I wasn't the only one.
I've counted something like 25 different alternative energy options. So surely among all of those, there are enough sources of energy to
keep us living basically the way we are in perpetuity. That's not the reality. You know, we're getting, in some cases, no energy from these potential options.
Richard York of the University of Oregon published a study in the journal Nature in which he posed the question, do non-fossil energy sources actually replace fossil fuels?
Well, we implicitly assume often the substitute pushes out the thing you want it to substitute for. What you find is nations that add non-fossil energy sources do not seem to see a particular suppression of fossil fuels.
That's pretty mind-blowing. We've got billions of dollars being spent, and green energy is not even replacing fossil fuels.
They don't even know that that's a question. Yes.
The story that we're in right now is, okay, we're in ecological hot water, but there are technological fixes. And if we're just creative enough, if we're just ingenious enough, and if we just work hard enough, we will triumph. Seeking technological fixes one after another is simply going to lead us to another level of catastrophe sooner rather than later.
We want to believe that these things are going to be available for us. So if we get a little worried and somebody comes up with a new thingy and promises that, you know, this will do it for us, we want to believe.
Because we're a little worried. Are we desperate to accept any idea that sounds alternative or green? Are we avoiding looking too closely because we don't want to know the answer? Ozzie Zenner, a visiting scholar at UC Berkeley and Northwestern University, was asking some of the same questions.
So this is another part of the film they had a huge problem with because they said, you know, like everything they point out was old and this Aussie guy, blah, 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 blah. And that's not how we do it. And so it was just like, okay, well, whatever. Yeah, he's talking about how solar panels are made right now. And how, like, you got to heat up this silica or whatever, and you got to burn all this coal in order to do it. And so the end does not justify, the end is not justified by the means.
Coal plants were closing, but Ozzie explained that well-meaning people were being misled.
NV Energy is now going to go ahead and shut down the plant and go with renewable. One of the largest solar plants, and that's going to happen right behind me.
Since you can't replace a coal plant with solar, they're actually replacing the coal plant with 2 natural gas plants. And natural gas is a fossil fuel. This is the Las Vegas cogen natural gas plant. This is one of the facilities that's replacing the coal plant that's being shut down. This is the Sun Peak. But what they don't tell you is that we're also building a larger natural gas facility.
So we'll be retiring the 2-unit, 376 megawatt coal plant. We'll invest $750 million to build a state-of-the-art natural gas plant.
When Michael Brune stands up and talks about clean energy, he's using solar cells and wind turbines.
This is the new world, 100% clean energy.
When Michael Bloomberg stands up and says cleaner energy, he's talking about natural gas.
Create cleaner energy, solar, wind, and natural gas.
In fact, the Sierra Club's Beyond Coal campaign actually coincides with one of the largest expansions of fossil fuel production that we've ever pulled off, most of that being natural gas.
Ozzie's assertion that renewables were not replacing fossil fuels, if true, would upend all of our assumptions about green energy and what was going to save us. What would happen if I asked the same question to industry insiders?
Yeah, maybe that's why this is shorter.
Where do solar panels come from?
Well, you have to start with a mine.
Or what's stopping us from running the world on 100% solar and wind?
Well, intermittency is one of the major challenges with
Grid stability.
The sun's everywhere except when it's not there.
There's a lot of developers that were flashing.
So here's another part where these guys, you know, the debunkers got all upset. They're like, no, it's not a problem like that anymore. So, I mean, I won't bother showing this if that's true. Then this is moot. But again, like the big thing I wanted to illustrate with this is it's about money. Like by the end of this video, you realize that the $100 billion in stimulus that Obama gave to all of these companies was like just a big back scratch And these same companies, they got the money from grants from the government, and they were already producing fossil fuels, and then they added on to that they're doing green tech too. And so Arnold Schwarzenegger and so they got like they're basically getting 3 times the money, you know, from what they were originally getting just doing the fossil fuels. Acid rain permit.
From a gas plant, suspended from a big scaffolding, a tower, and surrounded by giant mirrors in the desert. The plants that we're building, the wind plants and the solar plants, are gas plants.
What kind of game is being played here? I mean,
Well, we're basically just being fed a lie. For instance, you'll hear about Germany running on wind and solar.
35% right now.
50% of their power.
There were days this past summer when the Germans were generating 80% of their power from the sun.
But Germany is still Europe's largest consumer of coal.
Aber wenn in dieser Region die meiste Kohle gefördert wird, dann ist ja auch hier der größte CO2-Ausstoß.
Only a small fraction of our energy actually comes from wind and solar. In fact, Germany is pushing forward with a large terminal that could import natural gas from the United States. Elon Musk, the founder of Tesla, when he announced his Gigafactory battery plant, he said it would power itself with wind and solar energy.
Through a combination of geothermal, wind, and solar, it will produce all the energy that it needs.
But in fact, it has lines connecting it to the same electrical grid that we're all connected to.
Maybe that's why this documentary seems so much shorter than it was when I first watched it, because they went back and edited a bunch out and then re-uploaded. Oh, he's talking about how iPhones by Apple, they claim they make them off of like just totally renewable energy.
Fuels to run a place like Ivanpah, you need the devil himself, or in this case, themselves.
All the mirrors that you see there are built by
Michael Moore hates the Koch brothers.
Glass industry, a company that they control. Coke Carbon creates a lot of the inputs that are used to create the cement and the concrete and the steel. And not only that, they build the plants that builds polysilicon for solar cells. They actually their own solar line called Solar Molex. From every step of the process, the Koch brothers are there.
But they're the evil doers.
Yeah, the funny part is that when you criticize solar plants like this, you're accused of working for the Koch brothers. That's the idiocy in all of this. This absolutely cannot extend civilization's life.
Earlier, we heard Mark Morano being accused of receiving money from the Koch brothers by that news interviewer. Yeah, this was pretty crazy. I don't know how up to date this is. I mean, it's still here, so it must be still pretty accurate. Now, I know this looks just horrible. Oh my gosh, look how awful this is for the environment. This is the reality. This is what happens when you're harvesting the Earth's resources that have been given to us so that we can live, advance technologically. It's not pretty. Hopefully places try and do it in a way that's eco-friendly. But, yeah, it costs something. The point, though, is, you know, if all this is still going on, in order to produce green energy harnessing stuff, well then carbon dioxide still be an output. And the reality is this: the people in power are not going to stop making money. Okay? And if they can't make money, like, they're not going to slow down on production of solar panels and wind turbines or whatever and electric cars just because they want to try and be better to the environment. they're going to keep pumping them out, and they're going to get smarter with their ad campaigns to tell you you need a new electric car every 5 years, right? Shoot, I have a nice car from 2007, and I am convinced parts of it were engineered to fail, you know? And yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. This is about money. It's about control, environmentalism. It's just another means to an end for a wealthy elite. And there you have it. That cost a lot of energy to put up.
The beauty of a solar facility, and particularly this technology, is that it is so environmentally benign.
So I guess they're clearing these plants out of the way to put up their solar panels.
I too had once thought deserts could be sacrifice zones. I was wrong. Deserts are not dead. They are in fact full of ancient life.
All right, let's get back to the money stuff. Like the reality, I might forget, but the reality is this. We have the technology already to take care of ourselves and the earth. You know, we have been granted the ability to harness nuclear energy, and fear campaigns are run to tell us that it's just so dangerous, and Fukushimas are going to happen constantly, and Chernobyls will happen constantly, and everyone will be radiated. And it's like, it's just ridiculous. That's not the truth at all. It's so much safer now than it was before, and the technology just gets better and better. So if we relied on nuclear for a lot of our energy consumption, if we relied on fossil fuels for fuel for vehicles as well as for petroleum products, you know, we could really reduce a lot of what we're doing. There's another thing that the bunkers had a major problem with. They didn't like hearing that wind was such a bad idea. But you know, one of the things that this documentary kind of summarizes is the reality that we just consume way more than we need to consume. And that's true. We're just way more wasteful than we need to be. Like the packaging in most of our products is just ridiculous. Why? Well, somebody's friends own the companies that produce the packaging. And you can't just cut down on that because now you're screwing that guy over. So on and so forth.
Every expert I talked to wanted to bring my attention to the same underlying problem.
There are too many human beings using too much too fast.
As a global community.
And then another thing we have to realize, this whole idea that there's just too many people on the earth and we're just using too much. There's so much of the earth that it doesn't even have people living in it. And if we properly, you know, spread out and whatnot, man, if we spread out and we didn't waste what we use, we would be so well off. So well off. There'd be no problems. We just like, look at how much food gets wasted in a grocery store, you know? Goes on the shelf, no one buys it, it expires. Goes in the produce aisle, no one buys it, it expires. I'm not sure what was this.
Our human we tapped into millions of years of stored energy known as fossil fuels.
Oh,
our human population
growth rate.
For a fall from an unimaginable height. Not because of one thing, not climate change alone, but all the human-caused changes the planet is suffering from. So why are bankers, industrialists, and environmental leaders only focused on the narrow solution of green technology?
There we go.
Is it the profit motive?
Yes.
And why, for most of my life, have I fallen for the illusion green energy would save us?
Because that's what you're told, man.
Clearly, to answer this question, I needed professional help.
This part's super sad. It's so fatalistic.
I'll just be honest with you about my dilemma. You can be my, clinical social psycho. It's like the right has religion, and they have a belief in infinite fossil fuels. Our side says...
That's not true.
Oh, it's going to be okay. We're going to have solar panels. We're going to have wind towers. As soon as I heard you talk about our denial of death, I'm like, could that be it? Could it be that we can't face our own mortality? Could we have a religion that we're unaware of?
Absolutely. I think you've hit the
It's called atheism.
Nail on the head. What just differentiates people from all other forms of life is that, we're not only here, but that we know that we're here. If you know that you're here, then you recognize even dimly that you'll not be here someday. And on top of that, we don't like that we're animals. So we don't like that we're going to die someday. And we don't like that you could walk outside and get hit by a fucking meteor. What human beings did back in yesteryear is to envelop ourselves in culturally constructed belief systems. Call them cultures, call them worldviews, schemes of things, whatever you call.
Worldview actually simply means the view you have on the world based on your own experiences. So everyone has a worldview, and they're all religious to some extent, regardless of whether or not a person self-identifies as such.
Call them. Every human community has them. Every culture has an account of the origin of the universe. Every culture has a prescription for how you're supposed to behave while you're here. And every culture offers its denizens hope of immortality, either literally or symbolically. Then the question is, well, what happens when you bump into people who don't share those beliefs? Whether you know it or not, whether you like it or not, that's undermining the confidence with which you subscribe to your own views and exposing you to the very anxiety that those beliefs were constructed to eradicate in the first place. If we're to make progress, whatever that word means, or even to persist as a form of life, we're going to need to radically overhaul our basic conception of who and what we are and what it is that we value. Because the people that you referred to earlier, both on the left and the right, that think we're going to be able to discover more oil or solar panel ourselves into the future, where life will look pretty much like it does now, only cleaner and better.
Either with more oil or greener
Correct.
or both.
I think that's just frankly delusional.
One of the things they're going to tell us is that in order for us to continue on, well, they already are telling us that in order for us to, save the earth, we have to drastically reduce what we're doing. And, as tyranny grows, you're going to have like forced reduction of travel, and people are going to be forced to live in dwellings that are, a lot smaller than we are fortunate and blessed enough to enjoy today. And you already look at places all over the world where, skyrise apartments where people have a dwelling which is like 12 by 10 feet. And, it's pretty ingenious. But at the same time, it's only necessary if you're in a super overpopulated city, when there's so much space for us to enjoy. And, the whole idea that, oh gosh, we're almost out of oil. They tell us that all the time. And then we go discover, oh my gosh, we have so much more. Like Canada, they believe has, I forget how much more than Saudi Arabia, but it's just like so much. And then they go find it in the ocean, and it's just, there's so much. Not to say we should keep using it the way we do, but we could last a long, long time if we switched some of the other ways that we're dealing with energy.
What I'm hearing is that if I haven't come to grips with my own anxiety about death and life and presented with a reminder of that, I'm highly likely to make some tragic decisions for the community.
Yes. The only solution in principle is, as Albert Camus put it, he said, there's only one liberty: to come to terms with death. Thereafter, anything is possible. I find that downright inspiring.
Yeah, that's awful.
Environmental leaders who dwelled in...
It's almost nihilistic, to think, hey, look, we're going to die, so we can do anything. I mean, that's subjective. It means a lot of different things to other people. We've got more than enough evidence from just this last century or even this last couple of decades. People that think they become worm food when they die are willing to do atrocious things to others, even to themselves.
Comfortable illusions. How tragic of decisions were they capable of making? I was about to find out.
Oh, yes. So this is where they're doing
residues, but actually a great deal of what the McNeil facility and lots of biomass facilities burn is whole trees, as you can see by this pile that's stacked right outside of the facility.
So biomass, okay? These places claiming they're reusing, unnecessary natural biodegradable products or whatever in order to make energy. Here is the reality. It's shocking. I didn't know about this.
These are trees.
It turns out that the biggest source of green energy in Vermont is something called biomass, burning trees to create electricity.
This is definitely not
ridiculous.
the way, and that the first step is actually looking at our lifestyles and how we can reduce our energy consumption. This is all
for years, for millennia. This is how we heated our homes. Wood. And now they're just burning wood, and then it's going through an electrical grid. Ridiculous. And here they're getting kicked off the property.
The reality is what you have is a facility that burns 400,000 green tons a year of trees. This facility burns 30 cords of wood per hour.
That's a hell of a lot of wood.
And on top of that, it actually burns natural gas as well.
And to think you would have to have 10 of these to replace one average coal-fired power plant. It's just not going to work.
It's just nuts. It takes a great deal of fossil fuels to cut down all of these trees, to truck them in, to use the big machinery to dump the wood chips everywhere. So the idea that somehow this is not anything to do with fossil fuels just doesn't even make any sense. It couldn't happen without fossil fuels, in fact.
How did the environmental groups get pulled into this?
Obviously, the main factor is delusion. A lot of these environmental groups have been saying that all we have to do is, for instance, switch our fossil fuel economy over to a few solar panels and windmills, and we can continue living life, as normal. Some of the environmental groups have been for years touting facilities like this, saying that, number one, it's carbon neutral, that this will actually help us fend off climate change because there are no CO2 emissions. It actually emits over 400,000 tons per year of
and you're cutting
dioxide.
down trees, which intake CO2.
They'll grow back over a period of decades to centuries. But if we cut every tree in the United States, it would be able to power the country for a year. And then what happens when, the trees are gone?
That's insane.
This is actually a solid waste incinerator that's posing as a biomass plant. The impact on this community is severe.
This
the plant
awful.
is right next to its Head Start school for preschool kids. There is Green Hill Manor, and that's an assisted living senior residence. And there's also a Catholic elementary school right next door.
How do you know they're polluting? Can you see it
We
ever?
can see it. The snow at the elementary school and at the at the preschool is covered with black, some kind of black soot. We
Yuck.
just had it analyzed, and it came back as mostly tire chips.
Oh
They
my
have
gosh.
to raise the temperature of the fire, because anybody who's tried to burn green wood or wet wood knows that it doesn't burn very well.
But this biomass plant had yet another surprise.
Green wood
They
chips.
admit that they burn 20.1 tons per hour of creosote-treated railroad ties.
Oh my
Besides that,
gosh.
They are allowed to burn 500 pounds per hour of PCP-treated railroad ties. These are shipped in from Canada. It's not green, it's not renewable, it's not carbon neutral, it's not anything that they claim it to be. Yet, they got $11.5 million grant because it was classified as renewable. The plant owner told us that they were having trouble getting enough wood chips. And he even asked us if we had any scrap wood where we lived, would we call the plant and let them know so they could come up and pick it up?
We're not talking about some old industrial site. We're next to one of the most beautiful places in the world.
We are next to Lake Superior. This is Keweenaw Bay. This is actually Lance Bay. It's part of Keweenaw Bay. It's Lake Superior, our lake.
She's pretty moved by that.
So it's a very sacred place.
I don't know about that.
Michigan State University students, inspired by 350.org, were holding a rally for the...
It's like the communists have said, university, college students, this age range is just so impressionable and easy to manipulate for their cause and become their power engine for pushing this garbage. It's just sad. They're just so indoctrinated. Wait, what's this guy have to say?
Energy contracting company. They put together like a modeling tool. First like 2 or 3 months that the steering committee was using this modeling tool, it didn't even contain data for wind or solar. So there was...
Adam told me they were planning on substituting coal burning with biomass burning.
The permit that is currently being considered by the state is a permit for 24,000 tons of biomass per year. And the plan is to do that in all four boilers. Unfortunately, the steering committee considers biomass renewable at the moment, which we're not happy with.
Michigan State wasn't the only university to go green.
I'm happy to announce that Carolina will be going beyond coal in the next decade.
Where's the part where it's like skeezy dudes making money?
Welcome to the celebration of the opening of Middlebury's new biomass gasification system. It's now my great pleasure to introduce this afternoon's speaker, Bill McKibben.
What powers a learning community? And as of this afternoon, the easy answer to that is wood chips. It's incredibly beautiful to stand over there and see that big bunker full of wood chips. You can put any kind of wood in, oak, willow, whatever you want. Pretty much anything that burns, we can toss in there if we can chip it down to the right size. And there are very few similar cases any place in this country of that kind of change over that scale. But it shows it could happen anywhere, and it should happen anywhere. In fact, it must happen everywhere.
It must happen everywhere.
This dude's a mouthpiece.
And now it's time for a nature break.
Funded.
Enjoying our sustainably managed Michigan forests.
If you walk through here and you look, there's virtually nothing growing. A little bit of grass occasionally.
And it seemed that biomass plants indeed were suddenly everywhere. Like this one in Cadillac, Michigan. In Detroit, an incinerator that burned garbage was considered green.
The Detroit incinerator is known to emit horrible smells and pollutants that neighbors say make them feel sick and put their health at risk.
It's a stink. It's a horrendous stink.
A proposed biofuel plant for the Upper Peninsula of Michigan would consume trees from tens of thousands of square miles.
In order to create 40 million gallons of ethanol, they were going to have to use up
over 1 million tons of green wood. We pointed out that they were going to be using more natural gas than they were going to be creating ethanol to displace the natural gas. If you continue to do this, you're going to be fertilizing the forests.
Fertilizing the forests with fossil fuels.
Fossil fuel-based, right, fertilizers.
Made from natural gas.
Yeah.
And so someone would be able to sell that fertilizer as well. Again, it's just a huge money-making racket. It's like the biggest lie.
Then came a ballot proposal backed by Bill McKibben and nearly every major environmental group.
So there's
requiring
Sierra
Michigan to
Club
get
we heard about earlier.
25% of its electricity from renewable sources by the year 2025.
This year, Michigan voters have a choice. Keep burning dirty coal and oil, or move Michigan to clean, renewable energy like wind and solar. Vote yes on Proposal 3.
Surprisingly, Proposal 3, also known as 25 by 25, was the brainchild of an organization that was 100% biofuels and biomass.
Allowing America's farms, ranches, and forest lands to be active participants in contributing to America's energy future.
These are the biomass and biofuel plants across the U.S.
Good golly.
How did this happen?
Someone
it wasn't
got
just
money.
the USA. It was all around the world.
Look at all the wood chips.
Which is just a euphemism for trees, are being exported.
Like, what the heck? What's coal? Well, apparently coal is compressed wood buried in the ground over time. And so they went from burning efficient wood to just burning a whole lot of wood. Like, the stupidity. It boggles my mind.
To Europe from America, British Columbia, Brazil, and Indonesia, wherever they can get them from. Biomass, especially when you add in biofuels, is by far the largest portion of green energy around the world, even in Germany, source of the solar miracle. But maybe I was missing something. Maybe I had it all wrong. I decided to ask people protesting fossil fuels how they felt about biomass and biofuels as green energy.
Did you say we don't need to do biofuels and food and forest for energy?
No, definitely not. Of course not. Of course not.
Burning biomass, any kind of combustion is something we just need to move away from.
The more trees we have, the better. A lot of that didn't grow overnight. If we cut it down, we don't know the impact of that.
You're here as an oak tree. Yeah. If I had a chainsaw, that wouldn't be saving the planet. No, it's a painful way to go. I can tell you that right now. It'd take you a while to regrow. Yeah. Oh yeah. It wouldn't be me. It would be like an offspring, you know.
With so many people doing it on such a massive scale, all of a sudden at once, like that's pretty serious.
It's like when they were like pushing for ethanol from corn, how many agricultural groups realized, wait, oh gosh, I'll make more money producing corn than I am doing grain or barley or whatever. Wheat or barley. So grains. And so like all of these like acres and acres of farmland that were used for us to eat food were now being turned into like ethanol producers, and it was like so wasteful. The amount of corn mush you need to make ethanol is just so ridiculous. It's like just the proportions for your return is so beyond ridiculous. I can't believe anyone would actually think it's a good idea, but people do.
No, I think we should not be burning trees.
No. Why would we cut down trees? We shouldn't replace one terrible way of getting energy with another terrible way of getting energy. Because it's one thing.
Clearly, most citizens are opposed to biomass and biofuels. But what about environmental leaders? At times, they have promoted biomass, but other times, they sound like they are against biomass.
Depends on how much they're making,
Sierra
I'm
Club
sure.
Policy, we are deeply concerned about the implications of wood to energy for native forests. Or this statement signed on by 75 environmental groups, burning forests for energy will destroy one of our best defenses against climate change.
Exactly.
But then again, their language has loopholes that enable biomass. The NRDC says you must use the right types of biomass. The Dogwood Alliance says maybe small biomass plants are okay. And the Sierra Club flat out states biomass can be sustainable. Which side are they really on? I thought for sure with the camera rolling, environmental leaders would speak for the trees.
We're here to tell a story about what the forests of this state, of our Commonwealth, mean to us.
Does your organization have any stance on that?
I'm not sure I would say we support it as much as we can wrap our heads around it. We've almost made a peace with the timber industry.
I'm just curious, what's your group's stance on using forests for biomass?
Biomass is renewable, biomass is sustainable.
And I'm with Clean Water Action. We don't really have a stand on it. If the director of the Sierra Club was here, she'd be able to talk your ear off about it.
I'm the director for the Sierra Club in Pennsylvania.
Does the Sierra Club support or not support biomass?
I'm not totally prepared to talk about our policy on biomass today.
I thought she was going to talk his ear off. So, I mean, this is what happens, friends. A person like this gets a check or whatever in their foundation, and now their salary is, I don't know, $50,000 US a year, and it's just so they can keep rah-rahing the troops and gathering people to these protests and preparing the occasional article or whatever. You know, it's like it's a fake existence. It does nothing to contribute to society. It doesn't produce anything. It's just such a shame. There's so many people, like, it's just so many people that are involved in this kind of a way of life, and it's just like, man, it's crazy. And yeah, she's just there to help these big corporations look good, you know.
Today, our position is somewhat nuanced, so I just want to be, careful not to.
So you're with 350?
I am.
Does 350 have a position on biomass? Because I'm kind of actually...
I can't really speak for 350.
Do you personally have an opinion about whether we should be burning trees for green energy?
No, I don't have an opinion on that. I like a fire.
One of my biggest
A fire is different than all of those trees.
Are you aware of the problems with biomass or biofuels?
Yeah, I'm not as aware of that as I could be or I should be.
Jeff Gibbs, working on a documentary in Michigan, where I'm from. There's large plants that burn trees for energy, and pretty much whole trees chipped up. Do you have a thought about whether that should be part of green energy or not?
Well, the great thing about green energy is you don't have to pick a favorite.
Jeff Gibbs.
Oh, hello.
My biggest concern is that in Germany, for instance, they're moving towards solar and wind, but 60% of their actual energy is coming from biomass. 60% of what's considered renewable energy. Burning trees for energy?
I don't know the details out of Germany. What Germany's really doing is a lot of sun and wind, and that's really powerful to see.
I'd like to see us come out against any burning of trees for clean energy. Would you?
Although I confess I stoke my wood stove almost every night of the winter, so I'm not the right person.
But designating green energy for power plants.
Yeah. I don't know.
Pellet wood stoves are probably one of the more efficient ways to heat a home if you can, in terms of wood burning, because there's the pellets are burnt so well and so completely, and there's very little waste compared to what those guys are doing in those plants, is plowing through forest after forest to just burn the wood. Oh my gosh.
We're burning trees instead of fossil fuels.
From Taiwan.
Oh, good.
And we're wondering that what role do you want to play in this market?
I think the biomass question is a non-starter.
Non-starter. Oh my gosh, it's so funny.
I found only one environmental leader willing to reject biomass and biofuels.
So we are talking of the old oil economy trying to maintain itself now through another raw material, the green planet. The only reason corn and soya is being planted for biofuel in this country is the subsidies make it profitable. I think the big crisis of our times is our minds have been manipulated to give power to illusions. We shifted to measuring growth, not in terms of how life is enriched, but in terms of how life is destroyed.
Her honesty was refreshing. But as for the rest of them, I wondered, what are they hiding? And why are they hiding it? Is it their ignorance? Or is it something else?
Money!
What if
I think
they
this-
themselves had become misguided?
I think this is the part that I wanted to show everyone.
What if they've made some kind of deal they shouldn't have made? And are leading us all off the cliff. It was long past time for me to come to grips with the other elephant in the living room. The profit motive. The only reason we've been force-fed the story climate change plus renewables equals we're saved is because billionaires, bankers, and corporations profit from it. And the reason we're not talking about overpopulation, consumption, and the suicide of economic growth is that would be bad for business, especially the cancerous form of capitalism that rules the world, now hiding under a cover of green.
Today, Bloomberg Philanthropies is making, I'm happy to announce, a new investment of $30 million in the Beyond Coal campaign. We have more. I'm glad to say that more than a dozen additional funders have committed to match that $30 million.
And who were these new partners? One of them was Jeremy Grantham, billionaire, world's leading timber investment advisor. They were not investing in trees to turn them into nature preserves, which might answer another riddle. Why is this name redacted on the Sierra Club's tax return? Would they be
$3 million
embarrassed to take $3 million from a man who made his living selling the forests of the world? Bloomberg bringing a timber investment billionaire to the party was no coincidence. Bloomberg sponsored a UN climate session to discuss ramping up biomass and biofuels around the world. Billionaires were in love with the idea of turning what was left of nature into green profits. Remember when Al Gore had gotten Richard Branson to invest billions into saving the planet?
Richard Branson, founder of Virgin Atlantic, powered a Boeing 747 from London to Amsterdam on a coconut oil mixture to highlight the potential of this amazing oil as a clean energy biofuel.
How many coconuts
Branson
would you
had
need?
actually invested in biofuels. He was attempting to replace the jet fuel damaging the planet with biofuels that required the consumption of the living planet.
What a goofball, man.
And it was
Seriously.
game on for the airline industry.
Dozens of researchers from all over the Northwest gathered in Missoula the past 2 days to explore the idea of converting the region's massive reserves of wood into jet fuel, especially with the demand for aircraft fuel expected to grow by 1 billion gallons in the Northwest alone.
United Airlines will buy a $30 million stake in biofuel company Fulcrum Bioenergy. The airline used 3.9 billion gallons of fuel last year.
What technology was Silicon Valley billionaire Vinod Khosla hoping to profit from?
Nature takes 1 million years to produce our crude oil. Kior can produce it in seconds.
The company took over this old paper mill where logs are picked up by a giant claw, dropped into a shredder, and pulverized into wood chips.
Clean
gasoline.
green gasoline.
There must be a downside.
There is no downside.
Of course
the
not.
bank that crashed the economy, ruined millions of lives, and has our tentacles on the levers of power. What would their favorite form of green energy be?
One of the very interesting markets that we deal with is Brazil. It's unlike any other market in that today, alternative energy isn't really alternative energy. It's so much a part of the fabric of the society. The country began to utilize its vast resources of sugarcane to produce ethanol.
There was a man from Goldman Sachs who was particularly in love with turning forests into profits.
Has everybody got enough coffee? You might want to get some more.
Meet David Blood, former CEO of asset management for Goldman Sachs. How much money did Mr. Blood believe should be invested in green energy?
A natural alignment for something in the order of $40 to $50 trillion worth of capital.
$40 to $50 trillion. And who was going to help the man from Goldman Sachs? Help him raise that astronomical amount of money?
A gentleman some of you may recognize and know, Bill McKibben. It's entirely dependent on what kind of political will we can muster. And if we do not get this done very fast, then we're not going to get it done.
And so Bill McKibben went forth to generate the political will for trillions of dollars in green investments.
Our next guest has been called our nation's leading environmentalist.
And you are, in some sense, the grand poobah of the environmental movement.
My guest tonight is on a global crusade.
On a global crusade for what?
Like, if he's on these people's shows, you know there's a problem.
We can't justify
because they're propaganda machines. They're showed who to
So when
show,
you divest from
messages
fossil fuels
to message.
and invest in green funds, what are you investing in? I took a deep dive into Securities and Exchange Commission filings to find out. For instance, in the Green Century funds, recommended by 350.org and Bill McKibben, I found less than 1% solar and wind, and 99% things like mining, oil and gas infrastructure companies, including a tar sands exploiter, McDonald's, one of the companies driving meat consumption across the planet, Archer Daniels Midland, one of the world's largest producers of biofuel, Coca-Cola, the largest creator of plastic pollution on Earth, logging and paper companies, including one that brags about biomass burning, and banks. Lots of banks, including BlackRock, the largest financer of deforestation on Earth.
The business that they're engaged in is actually destroying our life support system.
The Sierra Club also partners with a green fund called Aspiration. Aspiration also includes dozens of companies profiting from the destruction of the planet, including Chevron, ExxonMobil, Chesapeake Energy.
In order to maximize the production potential of the well, the shale formation will be hydraulically fractured.
The Russian gas giant Gazprom.
Gazprom owns the world's largest explored gas reserves, 36 trillion cubic meters.
And in perhaps the most bizarre twist of all, the Sierra Club's Green Fund's biggest holding is Enviva, the world's largest consumer of forests, to be incinerated in green energy biomass plants. Of course, one investment option is a green fund run by Bill McKibben's buddy, David Blood. And who was the chairman of this fund? Someone familiar.
Use capitalism that gives incentives for people to do their best.
Al Gore and David Blood partnered to form a company called Blood and Gore. No, scratch that. Generation Investment Management.
Blood and Gore would have been too on the nose, so they didn't choose that name.
And within this fund, Blood and Gore designated a special investment category, targeting $650 million of biomass and biofuels. Funny thing was, they partnered before Al Gore's film came out. Was that movie just about climate change?
No.
Or something else?
It's about pushing for the money.
We have gold bars. Don't they look good? I'd just like to have some of those gold bars.
Yeah, you sure would.
Side of the scale,
I'll do anything for them.
the entire planet if we do the right thing, then we're going to create a lot of wealth.
And when it came time for Al Gore to choose between the entire planet and getting him some of them gold bars, what choice did he make? Here is Al Gore earning his keep by pretending to care about the rainforest while lobbying Congress on behalf of the sugarcane ethanol industry.
So any comment on the Brazilian effort here with the issue of the possibility of expanding into that Amazon River basin with further deforestation to produce more ethanol out of sugarcane is a worry, and apparently you're not as concerned about that.
No, I am. I simply forgot. What's been going on there is really very...
Nothing like bringing your kids to a protest and then riling them up so that they cry for good footage. I'm sure we've seen that here in Canada, have we not? In fact, right now, there's this awful thing going on in BC where some people are protesting some pipelines, I think. Meanwhile, the people from the community are actually for the pipelines, and the protesters have been bussed in from like 4 hours away.
Troubling. And with your permission, I'll show you a very quick example of it over a period of 25 years.
But hey, maybe those people there have legitimate concerns.
Sugarcane monocultures in the region clashes with the indigenous people's right to land. These are images of a last-ditch attempt by the Guarani Kaiowá to resist eviction.
Important to note that the exploitation of the sugarcane growing areas in Brazil does not have to inevitably have the knock-on consequence of causing destruction in the Amazon.
Sugarcane fields are burning. They're set alight before the harvest to eliminate the leaves and tops of the plant, which makes cutting more efficient.
Well, that's good for the air.
Environmentalists blame the seemingly endless sugarcane fields for air and water pollution on an epic scale. And along with deforestation, the threat it poses to the environment is becoming clear. Once the indigenous families were expelled,
that's one of the troubles with documentaries is they can be filmed in order to tell whatever story they want. And I mean, hey, you know what? Maybe these indigenous people definitely have a genuine claim and a concern. Or maybe they don't. Maybe they're just being paid by somebody to go sit down and cry, as is often the case here in Canada.
The Navy's work to help launch this new fuels industry is invaluable.
I can remember Arnold Schwarzenegger in Pumping Iron that came out in like the late 70s or whatever. Man, the documentarian had to admit he had wanted to film it as Arnold Schwarzenegger being the protagonist versus Lou Ferrigno, the antagonist. But as he got to know, oh gosh, that's disgusting. As he got to know, they're dead, by the way. Oh yeah, they're talking about animal oils, animal fat oils. Anyways, he realized that Arnold Schwarzenegger was like super egotistical and manipulative and cruel in how he psychologically attacked his bodybuilding opponents so that they would not be mentally prepared to put on their best show during their competitions. And yeah, it was brutal. And it was actually Lou Ferrigno, the underdog, was the person he wanted to root for by the time he was done filming. But anyway. Hurry up.
To enrich themselves. Well, that's why they're billion nature. To enrich themselves. You might ask yourself, how could men destroy what remains of nature? To enrich themselves. Well, that's why they're billionaires, and you're not. The takeover of the environmental movement
Everyone's
by
laughing.
capitalism is now complete. Environmentalists are no longer...
Capitalism in itself is not necessarily an evil, everybody. It's greed that's an evil.
Resisting those with the profit motive, but collaborating with them. The Nature Conservancy is now the Logging Conservancy.
We will capture the most important
pieces biologically. And there will be another large block sold to timber investment groups.
The Union of Concerned Scientists has become the Union of Concerned Salesmen, having taken millions not for science, but to create markets for electric cars. The Sierra Club sells electric cars and solar panels right from their website.
The best thing about Sungevity is that they make it easy for you. All that you have to do is to say yes.
Like, what happens after one hailstorm?
The New York Times partners with ExxonMobil to bring you the good news about biofuels.
Algae-derived fuel could help us meet growing demand.
Like, where I live, you can expect one hailstorm a year, you know? And not necessarily all over the town, but somewhere in town's getting hit, and it's getting hit hard.
Treehugger.com, which claims to be the largest single source of environmental news, was founded and funded by Georgia Pacific, a logging company. In fact, they are neighbors. Georgia Pacific is owned by our friends the Koch brothers, who are likely the largest recipient of green energy biomass subsidies in the United States.
Subsidies from the government,
Yes,
from
the
taxpayer.
And capitalism is now complete. But maybe it's always been complete.
How is 350.org funded?
Well, not very well.
Who are your funders?
Sure. To the degree that we have any money at all, it's come from a few foundations in Europe
which ones?
and U.S. Let's see. I'm trying to think who the biggest funders are. There's a foundation in
He really needs. He should have prepared better for this. I mean, you know you're going to get asked this at some point. Have your lies ready. Justin Trudeau's another case.
Sweden, called, I think it's called the Rasmussen Foundation, that I think has been the biggest funder.
So you don't get money from Pew or Rockefeller or any of those big.
No, we did. Rockefeller Brothers Fund gave us some money right when we were starting out. That's been useful too.
But they no longer fund you?
I don't know. I don't have a sort of
really
funder sitting in front of me.
But that's usually something that people know.
Rockefeller's been one of our is a great ally in this fight.
You just sold your TV network to Al Jazeera.
Right.
And that government is basically nothing but an oil producer.
Gas mainly and oil.
Your take on that, about $100 million pre-tax from a country that bases its wealth on fossil fuels. Isn't there a bit of hypocrisy in that?
Well, I get the criticism. I just disagree with it. I'm proud of the transaction.
You couldn't find for your business a more sustainable choice.
What is not sustainable about it?
Because it is backed by fossil fuel money.
I get it. I get it.
And so
gross, man.
Environmental movement
So
and
gross.
Environmental leaders. Why not buy the holy day itself?
Happy Earth Day!
Oh my gosh.
Lifetime. It's time now for a new generation to jump up on the stage and create a habitable country, a habitable planet that we can all enjoy. Are you that generation? I need to thank Building Energy, which provided so much solar power to this that we've powered the entire event with solar energy.
But when I went backstage to see what was really going on,
You ain't running this whole thing on that, Jack. I can tell you that. is 1,200 watts. So that run right there could run a toaster.
I found the installer.
Hi.
Are they
Maybe
running
this is
festival on
old.
these solar panels?
The concert is run by diesel generation system. They didn't ask us to energize the concert.
Oh, okay.
And we'd also like to thank our incredible corporate sponsors who've been behind the movement to end extreme poverty and tackle climate change since the very beginning. We want to thank Toyota. We want to thank Caterpillar.
We're standing at the construction 3 bulldozers. People have gone marching over the...
Oh my gosh, it's so funny.
The path to change. I truly believe that the path to change comes from awareness.
Well, that part's true.
That awareness alone
share this video
can begin to create the transformation.
Awareness alone does not begin to...
There is a way out of this. We humans must accept that infinite growth on a finite planet is suicide. We must accept that our human presence is already far beyond sustainability.
Got to start forced sterilization, depopulation.
We must take control of our environmental movement and our future from billionaires and their permanent war on planet Earth. It's us. It's not.
So all too often we see like these environmentalists or these people shouting for us to be concerned about climate change. You know, Leonardo DiCaprio comes to mind, all these Hollywood actors and rich politicians, and oh geez, watch out, orangutan. And it's like, they're not going to sacrifice anything. Are they going to take, you know, like 80% less yacht trips a year and 90% less jet setting? Of course not. It's us. So as they gain more and more control of the population, you and I will have less and less freedoms, less and less ability to do anything that's, you know, going to cause environmental harm, while they, the upper crust of society, will get to continue doing what they're doing already. And maybe even more so, you know, as they gain more and more control and more money and wealth off of people. So that's that. Like I said, the big part I wanted to show you was just about how the elite are the ones that are pushing the whole environmental movement. And what really struck me from this that I didn't realize before, like I thought, okay, oh, that's good. I always kind of assumed the goal was, you know, complete replacing of the use of non-renewables with renewables, and that in the end it would probably just be a zero-sum game in terms of carbon dioxide output and pollution. Now I realize that these people make money from the subsidies. Okay, so they make a bunch of money from all these governments giving them money to invest in renewable stuff, and then they make money changing to, or not changing, adding renewable energy, and then they continue to make money on the non-renewable stuff they're already doing, because all of the renewable stuff still takes so much usage of energy to produce things or whatever. So like we looked at like all the logging that had to be done to make the biomass wood chips. Like someone's making a lot of money. That's why that one billionaire who was investing in timber was now investing in consulting in regards to, you know, how to do biomass with wood chips. It's just ridiculous. So these people are so greedy, they're speeding up the destruction of our planet and the use of our resources in order to make more and more money. And it's just so violent and wicked. But more than that, we saw tonight that the whole environmental movement is being used to unite us under a one world system. It's being used to regulate everyone and regulate countries so that they have to give in more and more to a global agenda, which you and I are going to have to go along with. It's being used as a religious, spiritual movement, and their hope is a one world faith through taking care of the earth or whatever. I don't think ultimately that will succeed. I think that there will be, probably some form of New Ageism spirituality, some form of New Age spirituality is going to be the one world faith in the end that everyone climbs on board with. And something will be the catalyst to make everyone believe in that. which isn't true. But yeah, I mean, because that's just what appeals to most people. It's just easy to get on board with, because it's like, well, in the New Age, you can generally, it's pretty much any belief is okay. So people can believe that they're their own God. People can believe that they're divine, so they'll be their own judge. People can believe, as long as they're not too bad, they won't be accountable to anybody. And if they have been really bad, well, they're not going to judge themselves, so that's okay. And so it's just, it's a big, huge catch-all for everybody. So I don't think environmentalism will be the one world faith system. But, often, I mean, there's so much New Ageism in environmentalism where people are earth worshippers of the creation. And so that element will be easily accepted by a lot of people. And these are the things we need to watch for. These are the things we need to be concerned with. There's a huge agenda, and it's not good. If you've seen the movie Elysium, and I'm not necessarily saying, hey, go watch it, because it is pretty graphic. It tells a story about this guy portrayed by Matt Damon, who gets involved in all this stuff. But he's down on Earth, and Earth is like just falling apart, wasteland, slum, crap. And the rich elite, where is it? Do we got it? Okay. Get to live out in outer space on this giant ring space station, which of course, as it rotates, creates its own fake gravity. And only the wealthiest people get to live up there. Here's just an image of how nice it is up there. And into the horizon, you see the ring going up. But yeah, they live up there, and it's wonderful. And everybody else who lives down here, where life sucks, it's just one big ghetto. And I don't think it's going to be like that. There won't be a space station. Oh shoot, you might not be able to see all these pictures because of my box. There won't be a space station, friends. It'll just be estates down here on Earth, like it already is, where the elite live. But there'll just be more and more control over the large population of Earth. And that's what their aim is. A Marxist one world government where there's complete control over everybody, and we have a semblance of freedom so that we don't revolt. And we're disarmed, which they're already doing, so that we can't revolt. And the wealthiest elite will have control over all of the production, and will work for them, producing the things that we buy. And the governments will regulate, who can have a business, and it won't be us, so that the wealthy elite, who are the puppet masters of the governments, will get to keep making money hand over fist, more and more and more. And it's just so gross that they, like we just saw with environmentalism, like, for them, it's never enough. In fact, there's a wonderful quote here. Rockefeller quote. How much money is enough? How much money is enough? And can you ever have too much? I know people have more money than they'll ever spend, and yet they're still not happy. So what is the right amount? How much money is enough money? For John D. Rockefeller, the answer was just a little bit more. At the peak of his wealth, Rockefeller had a net worth of about 1% of the entire U.S. economy. He owned 90% of all the oil and gas industry of his time. This is back before the turn of the century, I think, in the 1800s. Maybe it was 1900s. Compared to today's rich guys, Rockefeller makes Bill Gates and Warren Buffett look like paupers. That's just it. Like, it's never enough for them, and they're just going to keep on taking, and it's just awful. And like we saw, yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, it's just, it's going in a bad direction. And And the saddest thing to me was watching the documentary, like the nervous twitches of that psychiatrist or sociologist or whatever who the documentarian was talking to. And I think it was because even though he wants to believe and state that he's come to terms with his own finality, he hasn't. He has no real inner peace. And his anxiety is coming out in his speech patterns, in his mannerisms. And that's heartbreaking to me. And the fact that, like, the documentarian himself, I think I might have skipped over it, but I remember the first time I watched it, he just was just talking about the desperate situation we're in and how indeed, the earth is going to be done in 12 or years or whatever. Ocasio-Cortez says it is, and McKenna. But friends, there is hope. You can have peace no matter how bad the world's getting. I do. I don't put this stuff out there because I'm scared. I put this stuff out there to make people aware. And mostly I put it out there so people know what the real hope is. And for one, we need to, and we can, resist what's going on. We need to understand what's happening and then share the truth with people. There's a one world government being put together and put in place. And it's not going to be good for us. It's not going to be good. And secondly, there's a God who wants to help us in this and can help us in this. But the unfortunate reality is we've rejected him so much, so many people have, that we're coming to the end where it's just like he's going to let the earth have its own way. And I don't mean the planet. I'm talking about the people on the earth have their own way. And like I said, it's not going to be good. And the taskmasters are not kind people. We've already looked at episodes 1 through 3, where we looked at the friggin' pedophile sex networks, like Jeffrey Epstein's that he ran, and the one that was run by, what was his name? From Nexium, and the one that was so blatantly obvious in Belgium. And I've watched more stuff recently about what's been going on in Britain, in London specifically. Jimmy Savile, who was like a huge celebrity. He had abused hundreds and hundreds of underage people, underage children. But anyways, things could turn around if people just came to know the Lord and followed him. But I hope that happens. And God has revealed himself through Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ, the Son of God, born of a virgin miraculously. He is preeminent. He's always existed, but he came in bodily form so that he could live a perfect life, teaching us how to live and how to follow him and how to have faith in him and in God, so that we could bring glory to God and live rightly and enjoy life the way he had wanted us to. And he's coming back to make all things right. And it won't be good for people that don't care about him and have rejected him and don't want to know him and don't want to accept his grace, don't want to accept his mercy, have decided already in their hearts and their minds that they will reject him and that they will accept whatever penalty he has waiting for them. And that penalty is an awful one. And as Jesus in the flesh, he had the right to, as our kinsman, redeem us from our penalty and pay the penalty himself, which is why he went on the cross, which is why when you see those crucifixes of people wear with Jesus on a cross, that's what he was doing. He was paying the penalty, the justified wrath of God for sin, the sins that you and I commit, the sins that were talked about on the 10 Commandments that were put in the Ark of the Covenant that we mentioned earlier, and we've broken them all in different ways, and we deserve the penalty. But God loves us so much that he gave his only son so that anyone who would believe in him and the works that he did would be given eternal life. And so he rose 3 days later, proving that he conquered death. His apostles and Hundreds of other people saw him. And he taught them on and off for about 40 days. And then he ascended into heaven and said, look, I'm promising I'm going to return. And if he's been good for everything else, he's obviously going to do what he said. And the reality is, friends, the Bible has over 300 prophecies that Jesus would come as the Messiah, the way that he did, and he fulfilled all those. And there are many, many more prophecies about what the end times would look like. And guess what? They look a lot like we're living in right now. In fact, the idea of the one world religion, the idea of the one world government, these things are spoken about throughout the Bible and more in detail in the book of Revelation, which is the last book written, so that we would know when the time was near, so that we would, one, get prepared, and two, have hope. And we can have all of our hope in Jesus. And so I'm going to do what I do every night when I'm done my stream. I'm going to pray to God, and I'm going to ask him for help. But more importantly, I'm going to ask him to open up people's eyes so that they will turn to him. Heavenly Father, thank you again for your goodness and your grace, because I know that I don't deserve it. I could never, ever repay you for the goodness that you've shown me in this life. And I pray, Lord, that you will help others to see your goodness and your love. I pray that you'll help people open up your word, the Holy Bible, first into the New Testament, read through it, and then to the Old Testament to see how you were prophesied of again and again throughout. It's just amazing. I pray that you'll help people to see the truth of what's going on around us so that they can resist it in ways that are good and righteous. And I pray, Lord, that people will get to know you and get to know your love and your mercy and your grace so that they can be spared. You paid the dearest and greatest penalty for us, and it was awful, but you did that out of love for us. And there's no greater love than for a man to lay down his life for his friends. So thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you, everybody. Have a great night.